There was once a little girl called Goldilocks, and she was called Goldilocks because she had beautiful golden hair. And she'd promised her mother that she would never go out by herself. But one day when the sun was shining there by the side of the forest, she woke herself up. She got herself dressed, she went down the stairs, and when she looked outside in the trees, there she could hear the birds, and she decided to take 1, 2, 3 steps. But when she got a little bit further into the forest, she saw a squirrel with a great big bushy tail, and she decided that she would take 1, 2, 3 steps. Then she saw some flowers. They were yellow in the middle with white on the outside. Then she saw some other flowers that were white on the inside and yellow on the outside. And she took 1, 2, 3 steps. But then she was starting to feel hungry, and she decided that she would turn round and go back home. But when she turned around and looked, she didn't see the birds. She didn't see the squirrel. She couldn't see the flowers. She saw mushrooms and ferns and animal tracks, and now she was a little bit frightened because she was lost. And she went, I wish I'd never come in. But when she sniffed the air, she could smell something really good. It was porridge, and she really liked porridge. And as she looked, she could see that there was a house. And on the windowsill of the house, there were 1, 2, 3 bowls of porridge. There was a great big bowl. There was a middle-sized bowl, and there was a small bowl. And she went straight up to the windowsill with the 3 bowls of porridge and picked up the big spoon by the large bowl, and it was hot and salty. And she didn't like that. Then she picked up the middle-sized spoon by the middle-sized bowl, and she tasted the porridge, and it was too cold and sugary. And she didn't like that. Then she picked up the small bowl, and she put the spoon inside, and it wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold, it wasn't too salty, it wasn't too sugary, it was just right, and she ate it all up. When she looked in through the window, there she could see 1, 2, 3 chairs. There was a tall chair, a middle-sized chair, and a small chair. And she went inside of the house, and she sat down on the tall chair, but it was hard and lumpy, and she couldn't get comfortable no matter what she did. Then she sat down on the middle-sized chair, and it was soft and feathery. And then she sat down on the small chair, and she did what she shouldn't have done. She rocked this way and that, and forwards and backwards, and it split and it broke with a great big crash. She picked herself up, went up the stairs, and at the top of the stairs there she could see 1, 2, 3 beds. There was a long bed, a middle-sized bed, and a small bed. When she lay down on the long bed, it was hard and it was lumpy and she couldn't get comfortable. Then she sat down on the middle-sized bed, and it was soft and feathery. But when she sat down on the small bed, it was just like her bed at home, and she fell fast asleep. But when she was asleep, the owners of the house came back. There were 1, 2, 3 bears. There was a great big daddy bear. There was a middle-sized mummy bear, and there was a very small baby bear. They looked at the 1, 2, 3 bowls of porridge, and the father bear said in his deep, gruff voice, "Who's been eating my porridge?" And the mother bear looked and said, "And who's been eating my porridge?" But little baby bear, he started to cry and went, "Who's been eating my porridge? And they've eaten it all up." The 3 bears went in through the door, and they looked at the 1, 2, 3 chairs, and the father bear looked and he said, "Who's been sitting in my chair?" in his deep, gruff voice. And Mother Bear said, "And who's been sitting in my chair?" In a kind, polite voice. But little baby bear, he looked at me, "Who's been sitting in my chair?" And they broke it into little pieces. The three bears went up the stairs, and when they looked inside of the bedroom there, they could see the 1, 2, 3 beds. Father Bear said, "Who's been sleeping in my bed?" Mother Bear said, "And who's been sleeping in my bed?" But little baby bear, he looked at Goldilocks inside of his bed and he went, "Oh, who's been sleeping in my bed and is still there?" Goldilocks jumped up and ran as fast as she could down the stairs and out through the door and through the trees, and she saw the squirrel and she heard the birds and smelled the flowers, and there outside of her own house she saw her mother. Her mother said, "Goldilocks, Goldilocks, Goldilocks, where have you been?" She told her about the 1, 2, 3 bowls of porridge, the 1, 2, 3 chairs, the 1, 2, 3 beds, and the 1, 2, 3 bears. "Oh, Goldilocks, promise me that you won't go out by yourself." And Goldilocks promised that she never would, and sat down and had the biggest bowl of porridge that you ever did see. And she lived happily ever after. There were 2 great hills, and on each of the hills the grass would grow. And between the hills there was a river, and over the river there was a bridge. Now on one side of the bridge there lived 1, 2, 3 Billy Goats Gruff. There was baby Billy Goat Gruff, who had small horns on the top of his head, no bigger than your thumbs. There was middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff, who had horns the size of your hands. And there was great big Billy Goat Gruff, who had horns on the top of his head as long as your arm. But underneath the bridge there lived a great and a terrible troll. The troll did not like anybody trip-trap-trapping on his bridge, which meant that baby Billy Goat Gruff, middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff, and big Billy Goat Gruff had to stay on their side of the river. Now, they would eat the grass, which meant that as they ate it, there wasn't much left. And they would look and they would think to themselves, "Wish we could go across that great big bridge and get to the tall, green, sweet grass on the other side." But they were very scared. Eldest baby Billy Goat Gruff and middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff were very scared of the troll. But baby Billy Goat Gruff was chewing at some small pieces of hard, dry, green grass and thought to itself, "I wish I could go across that bridge. I'm only small, and if I go across the bridge I wouldn't make a good meal for a troll. I wouldn't really." And so baby Billy Goat Gruff picked itself up and started to trip-trap, 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 trip-trap across the bridge, and it had nearly got to the other side. But just when it thought that it was safe, up jumped the great and the terrible troll. "Who's that trip-trap-a-trapping on me bridge?" Baby Billy Goat Gruff, with the horns on its head no bigger than your thumb. "Well, that's only me. Baby Billy Goat Gruff, please don't eat me. I'm very, very small. I wouldn't make a very good meal for you." The troll looked and said, "Well, why shouldn't I eat you?" And baby Billy Goat Gruff thought to itself, "I've got a brother. I've got a brother who's called middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff, and he's got bigger horns, a bigger body. He'd make a breakfast and a dinner for you to eat. Please let me go." The troll thought to himself, "Middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff, you say? Well, he sounds very good to me. Get off me bridge." And baby Billy Goat Gruff trip-trap, 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 tripped across and started to eat the tall, sweet, green grass. Middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff was trying to find some good grass to eat. It was looking around. It looked and went, "Baby Billy Goat Gruff, I wish that we could go and get some proper grass to eat." Baby Billy Goat Gruff and it looked over to the other side of the bridge, and who could it see but baby Billy Goat Gruff eating the tall, sweet green grass. If he can go across, then I can go across. The troll must be sleeping. And so middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff went onto the bridge in a trip-trap, 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 trip. And when it thought that it was safe and nearly at the other side, up jumped the great and the terrible troll. "Oh, who's that trip-a-trap-a-trapping on me bridge?" "It's only me, middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff. Please don't eat me." "Middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff, I've heard about you. You'll make me a breakfast and a dinner. Oh, please don't eat me. Please don't eat me." "Why shouldn't I be eating you?" I've got a bigger brother. He's got horns on his head as long as your arm, and he would make you a breakfast, a dinner, a supper, and a tea for 2 days. Please let me go." "Oh, you like the sound of this? Get off me bridge." And middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff, he trip-trap, 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 trip-trapped across the bridge and got to the other side. And baby Billy Goat Gruff and middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff were there eating the tall, sweet, green grass. Now, there was just big Billy Goat Gruff. He was there with his horns on his head, and he was trying to eat some of the hard, dry, brown grass. And he said, "Baby Billy Goat Gruff, middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff, I wish that I could be on the other side of the..." And he looked all around. And he looked over here. And he looked over there. He looked up and he looked down. And he could see them on the other side of the river. "If they can go across, then I can go across." And he trip-trap, trip-trap, trip-trapped on the bridge. And when he was about 3/4 of the way across the bridge, up jumped the troll. "Who's that a-trap-a-trap-a-trapping on me bridge?" "It's me, Big Billy Goat Gruff. I've heard all about you. You'll make me a breakfast, a dinner, a supper, a tea for 2 days. Now I'm going to eat you." "I don't think you will." And big Billy Goat Gruff bent his head down with his horns in front of him, and he ran as fast as he could towards the troll, and he hit the troll, and the troll went up in the air. Ooh, and down he came. And he landed in the water with a huge splash and was washed away. And from that time, baby Billy Goat Gruff could trip-trap, 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 trip. And middle-sized Billy Goat Gruff could trip-trap, 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 trip. And big Billy Goat Gruff could trip-trap, trip-trap, trip across the bridge and eat the tall, sweet green grass on both sides of the river. Little Red Riding Hood's grandmama had made her a beautiful Red Riding Hood, and she would wear it on top of her head and over her shoulders, and no one called her by a real name anymore. She was always known as Little Red Riding Hood. But when she found out that her grandmama was ill, her mother said to her, "Little Red Riding Hood, you must go to the other side of the forest, walk straight along the path, and take some things for your grandmama." Well, grandmama would like to have some bread, some butter, some honey, and some milk and some cakes. So if you take them in a basket, that will make her feel much better. Little Red Riding Hood was very excited. She had the basket, she had a Red Riding Hood upon her head, and she had promised her mother that she would walk straight along the path. But who was there in amongst the trees but the big, bad wolf? When he saw her skipping along carrying the basket, he stepped out in front of her and said, "Well, my dear, and where are you going on this fine and sunny day?" trusting Little Red Riding Hood looked at him and said, "I'm going to go to my grandmama's. She's not very well. I'm taking her a basket with some things inside. And what do you have for your grandmama?" "Oh, I've got bread and butter and honey and milk and some cake." "Oh, my dear, do you not have any flowers for your grandmama?" "No," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Do you think that I should take some?" "Oh, of course. If someone's not feeling very well, then you must take them some flowers. And there are some flowers just down there by the side of the river." Little Red Riding Hood had promised her mother that she would go straight along the path. But this great big bad wolf seemed to tell her that she needed to take some flowers. But "Now, just tell me where your grandmama lives," said the big bad wolf. "She lives on the other side of the forest in the cottage and—" "Well, you go along. It'll be fine." Little Red Riding Hood went off the path and went down to pick up some flowers for her grandmama. But the big bad wolf ran on to the grandmama's house, and he went to the door and he knocked upon the door. And the grandmama, who was in bed with a nightcap on her head and some glasses upon her nose and a nightie on her back, said, "Who's there?" The big bad wolf went, "It's only me, only me, grandmama, Little Red Riding Hood." The grandmama thought that Little Red Riding Hood's voice sounded very strange, but she called her upstairs. "Come upstairs, I'm in bed." The wolf could not believe his luck. He opened up the door, went inside, crept up the stairs and went to the bedroom. And there was Little Red Riding Hood's grandmama in bed. And quicker than a single heartbeat, the big bad wolf jumped upon her and took her and stuffed her inside of a cupboard and put her nightcap upon his head, put the glasses upon his nose and the nightie upon his back, and pulled the covers right up to his nose and closed the curtains and waited for Little Red Riding Hood to come. Little Red Riding Hood had the flowers, the milk, the butter, the honey, the bread, the cake, and she got to her grandmama's little cottage and she knocked upon the door, and the big bad wolf inside of the bed, dressed up like the grandmama, went, Who's there?" "It's me, grandmama, it's me." Well, come in, my dear." Little Red Riding Hood thought that her grandmama's voice was very strange and she must have been very ill indeed. But she went inside with the basket by her side. Up the stairs she went, opened up the door, and it was very dark in the bedroom. And in the distance she looked and she could see someone or something, and she didn't know what or who it could be. But as she looked, she said, "Grandmama, what big hands you've got! All the better to hold you with," said the big bad wolf. "Grandmama, what big eyes you've got! All the better to see you with, my dear." "Grandmama, what big ears you've got! All the better to hear you with, my dear." But when Little Red Riding Hood looked at her mouth, at least she thought it was her grandma's mouth, she said, "Grandmama, what big teeth you've got! All the better to eat you with." And here the big bad wolf swallowed Little Red Riding Hood whole and lay in the bed and was very full indeed and fell fast asleep. Now the woodcutter was passing by that way, and he'd never heard the grandmama snore like this. And he went inside with his axe over his shoulder, and he could see what had happened. He took the grandmama out of the cupboard, and he got Little Red Riding Hood from out of the big bad wolf's stomach, and filled the stomach with 1, 2, 3 huge stones, and stitched him back up again. And they all waited outside. Now the big bad wolf was very thirsty. I need to have a drink from the river. And when he went outside, he took a drink, but the stones inside of him made him so heavy that he fell in the water with a great big splash underneath the water of the river, and was never seen again. And the grandmama, and Little Red Riding Hood, and the woodcutter, and everyone who lived in that place lived happily ever after.